Welcome to my review of Nothing Else Matters. Fics so bad, I made a review about it that I'm going to record. It's also because it's easier to find that way and easier to share than YouTube posts, and some people, they prefer to listen to the rest. TLDR! By slavishly sucking Snoot Game's original script's udders, the story manages to fumble several promising setups, and it's not even funny. It's just aggravating fumble after boring repeat. Worst of all, it lacks heart, which is something even Nothing to Something had. This is hot dog shit. It's an actual waste of time. Fuck this guy. The Wordy review. As my brain calms down, it is time to review Nothing Else Matters. The Fics core premise is, Anon is a gay man who got bullied for being gay, on top of the usual, I think. And Fang is a pansexual, on top of being a non-binary. But not really, he's still just a guy. That plot point is still the same for some reason. Not only this, but Anon's parents are not supportive of his preferences, sexual preferences that is, to the point that he is going to be sent to the army to be straightened out. Which turns his future, it's quite bleak. It's a lot more bleak than original, where it was more like, he's just going to the army, but we all know that don't ask, don't tell, and everything else. It's not great. It's also a bit more dire and dour. One is, you need a job, here you go. The other is, I hope the army fundamentally changes you as a person, which sounds destructive and reductive in bad ways. Also, I don't even think the US military works like that anymore, so I don't know what the hell his dad hopes to get out of this. Like, 2020, things have changed, my man. Moreover, this fic brings up his faith, and Fang's faith. Along, you can draw parallels. You can talk about whose faith is strong or resilient, which has been damaged or shattered. How do they stand on things? I mean, they're both Christian, they're probably both the same denomination, but there are interesting questions to ask there. Now, that's a promising pitch. You can easily see Anon's connection, or lack thereof, with the LGBT community changing his relationship with Fang, and potentially Trish or Nasser, since Trish, is the one who brought up the non-binary stuff with Fang. There's also Sage. I forgot to mention in the written review, but there's also Sage, who is gay at the minimum. So, and Nasser, because, Nasser's also not gonna... There's a lot of stuff there. Fang, being male, should alter how people... Becoming a trans woman is different from becoming a trans man. People like to pretend that trans is... No. There's a reason why tomboys are okay, but feminine boys are not. His denouncement of masculinity is an interesting topic that is worth exploring compared to, she's trying to become, listen, I don't want to make a patriarchy, but in the patriarchal lens, women are lesser than men, so for women to want to be men is aspiring to greater heights, whereas a man wanting to be a woman is degrading and lessening himself. He's destroying something of value in the process. And in that mindset, trans women, worse than trans men, although trans men have their own problems because apparently men are a little stoic in uncomfortable ways if you're used to people, wanting to talk about your feels. But moving on. Even in this, I can't keep it out. Let's focus. To put it bluntly, you might have noticed there's a lot to talk about. It's almost forced to have potential. Even if you leave out the stupid little patriarchy thing, that's just like philosophy stuff. You don't need that in your story per se. There's a lot. There's faith, there's sexuality, there's gender, there's like acceptance of your community. There's like parental issues on both sides. My goodness. There is an entire epic worth of story waiting to be told. The only way none of the above, in the many angles that it offers, mean nothing. Sorry, it's the only way none of the above matters, is if you're a terrible writer who blindly follows ST script and would sooner shoot himself in the foot than grabbing a golden opportunity and changing it. Character traits, that aren't an SG, you ignore them because you're just copying the core script and you're not going to bother to do anything new. Except write one or two scenes and it's like none of these actually matter or contribute anything to the story. I don't know where you wrote these. But it took a real numbnuts to write something so obviously waiting to be written. You'd have to be a blind bat not to stumble over this gold mine that you dug up yourself. The author, being a real numbnuts, addresses none of these, and, like a blind bat, follows SU script, just non-stop shooting himself in the foot. Golden opportunities, even those written explicitly by the author himself, are crushed underfoot. It'd be impressive if it wasn't driving me insane! So there we go. Other than some parental issues, which are hand-waved and never actually discussed or explored with any meaningful depth, the plot is extremely close to Snoot Game, specifically Ending 3, at least in its broad strokes, aka the structural ones which matter for your plot's themes. Unlike some slavish adaptations, it's willing to indulge in choices that aren't necessarily good, which is something. Better to be bad than boring, after all. If I'm just gonna read Snoot Game again, I'll just play fucking Snoot Game. Worse still, despite setting up a real good graduation as the end by denying even college as an option, it's the army or nothing. Anon still just goes to the military voluntarily anyway after his parents disown him. Without ever arguing why. Anon has a part-time job thanks to Ripley for a while. Why doesn't he just... Like, at that point, you fixed the problem. You can just not do it. And they still do it because it's ending 3 and Anon has to come back a big beefy man. He's got to be a big beefy man. He's 6 feet. Did you miss the part where he's 6 feet? I'm taller than 6 feet, and you need to shut the hell up. It's... Okay. So, there's a lot of confusion going on here. At least in standard narrative writing, because in any normal plot, the decision to do this voluntarily or to not do it is a central conversation between principal characters. And if he still does go, it needs to be something epic. It needs to be something where you go, yeah, that's the only right choice. Even if it's personal. But the only reason it's done is because ending 3 does it. We don't get the lead up into it. It feels so wrong. Anon has all these friends. He has adults in his life that can help him out. And instead of working at the school or working at Moe's or maybe getting, that guy, that dad who works for the police, maybe he can get him into the police academy. Because Anon is getting kind of buff. All I'm saying is that there should be alternatives. There should be discussions about these alternatives not being viable, at the minimum. But ending 3 does it one way, so we keep it that way. It gets worse, though. However, my point is that nothing else matters, doesn't really deliver on its own premise or its own setups. It's like trying to tell a joke, but it never knows what a punchline looks like. It simply does, and for doing so, it's an unsatisfying, vapid, and ultimately meaningless story. It's quite close to a story without a point, because it just apes SG without a little input of its own. And whatever input he did provide and put in there is just discarded out of convenience, forgetfulness, or laziness, aka the worst reasons to discard something. If anything, it's impressively dull-witted. It takes a lot of effort to be that uncreative and bland, and repost the exact same story as your own. Just go, well, he's gay now. It hasn't really changed anything. Like, fundamentally, you can tell the story exactly with Snoot Game Anon, and nothing would really change. Like, you can tell the exact same story. You've done nothing. You have done nothing. You can't pretend. Nothing has changed. His gayness isn't a plot point. And the whole story is about him being gay! How did you do this? Even having something did some gonzo nonsense to spice things up, stupid as it was. Though I probably still hate NTS more for its fan reception than anything else. Or maybe Nothing Else Matter really is worse than NTS, convincing me it has redeeming qualities to begin with. Like, how the fuck did you do that? I hated that so much. And that's just something dire. It's kind of like finding Satan under your bed. Anyway, let's get off into the weeds things. Let's start picking some minutes. Let's start off easy. The writing itself. The text. It's obvious that the writer is either translating stuff directly, or has transliterated their own text, or otherwise supplemented from a different source language. I recall seeing a mention of a proofreader. However, the resulting text is just beyond even bad translation. Characters shake their heads when they mean to nod. Words are misspelled. Punctuation is often misused. In various ways, it's missing or too absent. Uppercase. The speaker of a given line is often as unclear as it is clear, which is terrible. Absolutely terrible. He loves not including actions before quotes, which is just very rarely does that pan out. So you have actions of different characters that are not speakers on lines that it's like, I need to tell you something, and then Fang flinches, and it's like, why isn't Fang flinches on the line with Fang's response? Okay. What it means is that the read is frustrating and unpleasant. And it's kind of like trying to chew on a jawbreaker. It's so dense, yet so nothing. Just empty sugar and calories. The core meaning can still be defined. You're not ever going to be truly confused, but the text seriously needed a second pass by someone who actually knows how to write, or someone with a better grasp of English or punctuation. Just either of those would have massively helped the text. 3 different angles. This, however, is somehow the work's... It's the least of the work's problems. Which is quite ironic considering that the raw text is, what it is. You think it could overpower the rest, like overcooked noodles, but no. The sauce is the problem. The story is worse. You can put that on the cover if you want to. Though to be fair, I prefer to be forgiving of grammar and writing and stuff, because it's not... A good story isn't told by grammar. It's made better, it shows attention and care. Having bad skin doesn't mean your organs are rotted, but it can often indicate or imply, books and covers, but a good book isn't put in a bad cover. So, to an extent, I'm willing to forgive, but on the other, this feels like it's bad in opposing ways. It's bad in one way, and it's bad in a way that should be mutually exclusive, but it somehow is. So let's talk about characters. Any good story, especially a love story about romanticus, needs characters with chemistry. You want those lovers to pop. You want their spats to pop. In fact, you always want chemistry of some kind to help explore dramatics, dynamics, character backgrounds, traits, contrasts, and more. Or just to make some genuinely cozy scenes where characters are smooching. If characters don't bounce well off of each other, you might as well not have characters to begin with. Anon and Fang are, well, they're kind of shit for each other. I'll get to that. But man. Okay, so chemistry. There's not much. I think Anon's personality and his jokes especially were the hard carry in Snoot game. Criminally so, but those are mostly absent here. Anon, like, what I mean with that is, in Snoot game, Anon and Fang are kind of, they're still shit, but there is enough work to make it work. There's glue, and Anon's personality carries so much of Snoot game on its back. Oof. That's why I think that a lot of people just bounce off it, because if you don't like Anon, you can't read it at all. However, because most of Anon's actual quippiness is absent, as a result, Anon and Fang feel like they're hostage of each other. There's none of the work done to make them function. Neither seems to care about the other's interests. They laugh at each other. Anon gets mocked for his multiple times, and it's like Fang doesn't even try. There is no effort to be a good, healthy relationship. There's no supporting, ironically, despite this author also fucking loving to spit that one out. And again, they hang out because they suffered, they suffered horrible drama, and the plot demands that they start kissing at some point. I can see them being friends over this shared mystery, but love? Love? No! Well, at least. And unsurprisingly, this guy can't seem to coax it out. You can make things work, is what I mean. You can write, you can have characters that shouldn't be together get together because you write them into situations and you write out their character explosion. But none of that happens. They just don't work, and they never work, not even at the end. It's like, why are you kissing? Are you that fucking desperate? Which isn't great, Chief. SG already suffered from Anon's show carrying him through the narrative. He sucks, he's an ass, and Fang doesn't help. There's a reason I strongly believe Anon Olivia is also a lost cause, and this is certainly evidence for it. Again, Fang doesn't help, being rather feminine to the point of avoiding masculinity early on, but picks up later. Well, maybe it's supposed to be Fang re-embracing himself, like letting go of the non-binary stuff, but given the author's screw-up, I'd sooner believe it was feedback that Fang was way too femme-coded to make it feel gay, because Fang's actual sex and gender are so obfuscated by the femininity. It's like, no, this is just a girl. Anon's still just dating a girl. If they're never gonna have sex, like, what actually has changed other than the absence of booba? If you're more generous than I, you can claim that actually it's because Fang is letting go of the non-binary stuff, and that's why Fang's becoming more masculine over time. They're becoming a man, a forsaken girl, that's just... The non-binary stuff doesn't come up, though! It's not important! In the original Snoot game, the non-binary stuff is primarily used as a tool to show that Trish is corrupting Fang. It is a symptom. The actual non-binary stuff isn't really all that important. It could be anything. It could be punk. It could just be punk. But Fang is gay and non-binary, so there's a lot, like, why is the non-binary stuff bad, but the gayness is fine? Fang could just have been a cis male from start to finish, and it wouldn't do anything. If for some reason, some people bring it up anyway, like it's this big fucking... Like, Trish barely exists in this story, and Fang's dad is, like, the actual character in this, and he mostly cares about the... It's depressing how underutilized Fang's own character is for the story, which is just, like, lol. And as the Scorpion said, Lamau. Okay, so I mentioned faith. The author brings up the cross in Anon's room, him going to church, blah blah, none of it matters. It's like that time Anon bought a Warhammer 40k figure. You know, those notoriously expensive, used for showing off or playing in local game stores. Two things Anon doesn't fucking do, and how does he afford it anyway? It feels like you could be hinting at visits, past visits to LGSs. Like, Anon used to have a personality, used to visit these stores, but out here he just doesn't know how to reconnect. But, no. Also, faith is a super touchy personal thing. Since Christianity and homosexuality have a long problematic relationship, and some scholars don't even think that the Bible even mentions homosexuality, there's a lot to talk about, like, between him and Fang. Like, do they hold on to their faith? How did they feel about their faith in the context of their homosexuality? I'm just saying, that took effort, though. And the writer here is trying to farm karma, like a good Redditor. Substance, get out of here. So let's just copy and paste SG script a little bit more, and file off all of Fang's pronouns. They're all just dude now. Another huge failing is that the villains get off easy. Naomi and Ripley are kind of the villains. But despite being more active opposition to Anon, they don't even get proper punishment or redemption. They never actually get discussed much at all. I mean, Ripley kinda does. I'm not gonna deny that his redemption scene isn't there, but man, if it isn't a bit sudden. He turns back to being a face, having a proper high note alone to earn it. He just kinda does. Emotionally speaking, he just turns around. I mean, I guess if he was always like that, fair. He's always been a dad guy, but don't include a character with this kind of frustrations if he was always doomed to turn around. At least you could give that moment a bit more emphasis instead of just going, it happened, I guess. It doesn't feel clever or deep. It just feels convenient and immersion-breaking. As for Naomi, it's way worse, because Naomi... I guess she loses prom queen, which never really felt like the big reason she did everything. It just felt like the cherry on top of the cake. As far as Naomi was concerned, prom queen was just, sure, you blew up her plans a little bit, but she doesn't seem all that upset. Also, Anon didn't even cause any of it. It's just that Stella just left-fielded the plot, and then she and Nasser break up, and it's like, none of this is Anon's fault. None of the plot happened because the characters did anything. This happened because some fucking tertiary character pops into existence for 5 seconds. Like, how is this a satisfying revenge? There is no revenge, and it's not satisfying. We never even get Nasser's follow-up, like, why did he break up with... I don't know. Also, again, Naomi commits, like, the worst action in the entire story. She calls him slurs and threatens to repeat history and ruin his life and get him assaulted and like, nothing. She walks it off without even being mildly inconvenienced, which is lame as heck. Not that SG did a lot of, like, revenge fulfillment fantasy writing. It really doesn't. Compared to what you think about your 4chaners would get up to. But at least ending 4 exists, and it was mostly left up to decide what happened. This walks a silly middle ground of just not even setting up that we can make... Also, there's another issue that bothers me, and that's that ending 3 happens. By which I mean the stuff that leads to ending 3. The auditorium scenes. Despite Reed and Trish having been hilariously omitted from the narrative for large portions, they still do the thing where Reed tries to inconvenience Anon, and they try to talk to Fang, even though none of that feels all that relevant and important in this particular version of the story. Also, Anon... Like, they don't have the background or the emotional substance to be satisfying villains. Naomi and Ripley are way more important to Anon directly and personally. So these two only show up as a cameo or because of leftovers from a rewrite than a satisfying result. But they still do the thing where Reed chokes Anon. Where Anon goes to the army despite the fact that it was his parents' ideas and they disown him, so like, why bother? Why? The man changes his life. But still does what his crappy parents wanted to do. So what's even the point of him... What's the point of any of this? But mostly... Trish and Reed ironically do too much for how little they do. Trish steals Naomi's plot and subsequent thunder, and also takes the blame. She does the auditorium scene. She exposes Anon. Why? Naomi was the one who threatened to do it, and Naomi should be the one to get punished for it. She dug up this information. Why is Trish getting the blame and Trish doing it? Why is she so motivated? What happened? Why isn't your plot cohesive and satisfying? But it couldn't... But we know why it happened. It happened because in original Snoot game, it doesn't happen that way. The author is a fucking lazy asshole. He doesn't have heart. He doesn't have passion. He just wants to farm that karma. Hell yeah, Reddit. Give me that fat updo. Which is bad. And not a fun bad. Or fun. It's just bad. Okay, I mentioned Fang before, but Anon isn't Anon either. In fact, a lot of things are different, and despite being different and necessitating changes to the plot or scenes, the author... plot and scene, more like idiot. Savvy. The author gleefully steamrolls any obstacle to such. Instead of a cohesive, cromulent narrative with consistent characters, you get people that are doing what the original game requires more than, well, what they should be doing. Characters are rolling downhill, about to die, and they show up in the next scene anyway without any care in the world because, fuck, it didn't happen in the original and we need to do the scene now. Such as Naomi's heel turn, which is by far the funniest in context, as she fundamentally alters herself in an active way, unlike Trish and Reed who fight into the background, and nothing is done with it because it's not in the original script. Naomi becomes a worse person. Trish steals her literal villain plot, because Naomi, in the game, never does anything while on screen. Can't imagine a more pathetic excuse of a writer. What kind of loser writes a story just to avoid writing his own fucking story? Like, Naomi doesn't get punished in SG because in the end she doesn't do that much. She pushes Anon around, but Anon is the locus of his own control. He carries the blame for what happens. And what came of it was good. Naomi was a scheming prick, but she wasn't hardcore evil. But nothing else matters. Naomi is. She's cartoonishly evil with her whole scheme. So she should get properly bonked. Instead of Trish taking the blame and doing it at all. Oh my god. The reason the above annoys me so much, doubly so, is because I like being surprised. I like something fresh. I like a plot that obviously wants to be more, and it's forced to sit in Snoot Game's skin because it's just uncomfortable and depressing. Boo! Okay, let's get back to the Fang thing. Why is Fang non-binary? No one else seems to care about it. Or be all that bothered with Fang being gay. Which is weird. Remember, that's Anon's entire deal is that people are bothered with him being gay. In fact, Fang's non-binariness even less significant than Trish. Like, why bother at that point? Another big problem, what I mean with that is, like, Trish and Reed are not central antagonists or characters, so, like, why are, like, fucking Judy and the other, I forgot her name, and Schizo, right? The Puppy Pal ladies take up way more screen time than them. So why are these characters here? The whole non-binary is just tied to those characters, and they're not important. Why keep it around? Another big problem is that the story obviously wants to be more grounded, a bit more gritty and cruel. Yet it fails to establish a baseline for how the world works. As in, how accepted are gays and non-binary people and the rest of the LGBT spectrum? So we know that, we need to know, is Anon's school an outlier or the baseline? And how at risk is he really? When Anon gets congratulated for coming out and then beaten up for it, there's a dissonance. That just reeks of arterial fiat. It's like, no, because in Snoot game he gets bullied now. It doesn't matter that before people were apparently just fine with it. That's bad, by the way. Real bad. That's one of your main things as a fucking writer. Building a world for the reader to get lost in. I got lost in the sense I don't even know if I should be worried or cheering. I have to know the stakes. And if the stakes are vague and wishy-washy, then I don't know what to care. I don't know, or care if anyone's in danger. Too much Arthur Fiat means that any problem is no problem. Is Anon at any risk at all or not? After it comes out, does it matter? It's so weird. We live in a world where you can buy mangas in supermarkets. Anime stuff isn't that big of a deal. You have to reestablish that. Oh. That's bad, by the way. There's more, but this is enough as is. On their own, these aren't the biggest problems. Well, not the biggest possible problems. But all of them taken together applies that no actual effort, insight, or anything was present. No heart. No interesting text. Which is fine, but the relationships also sucks. We don't even get some cute, cozy goodness. Fluff. So what are we getting out of this? Snoot game. You're reading Snoot game. Except one of the characters is a dude now and Anon's parental problems get, 10 seconds more screen time. How novel! It's more Snoot game in the same way that the Mona Lisa is more painting if you wear, blue-tinted glasses while looking at it. Man, what a beautiful Mona Lisa 2.0. Really worth the fucking work now. I can't pretend that my mental state isn't part of the reason. Watch the videos. I lose it sometimes. My tone is still bitter and mean-spirited. Then I prefer my reviews to be. But, in the end, nothing else matters. It's 80% just disgusting meh and 20% absolutely disastrous. Unlike One Kiss, which pulls itself out with some bravado, its recovery is unremarkable or fails to address the real issue. It doesn't actually recover. It's just pretending that it's doing something now. It's not even a band-aid like One Kiss. It's just changing oil when my tires flat. Great job. Thanks. That's not my fucking problem, though. Actually, you know what? No. Writing and reading this all out loud makes it clear that this work just sucks. It's bad. It's bad even for a teenager writing their first piece because it has no heart. It's afraid to have heart. It's lazy and cowardly and somehow prideful. Jesus would not approve. In fact, I'll say it. Nothing to something. That was overhyped garbage. Fuck that guy. But at least this story had some fucked up Frankenstein heart. Can't argue with passion. But this shit, man, it's hot garbage. Wasted time. So goddamn close to being subpar adaptation with the bare minimum gender swap. It's almost a textbook definition. It's not getting a grade. There's no use in doing so. It's not even fun disaster or gonzo shit. It's just shit. Unremarkable by the book shit. Copied from a dog I saw last week, so it's not even original shit. There's no passion, no heart. Effort. But effort ain't heart. Any man can push a boulder, but Sisyphus, he's got that heart. Let me summarize my big issues. I talked to someone in the comments about the flaws of very uncreative or highly similar crap conversions, aka taking Snoot game and just writing Snoot game again with nothing that really changes in an interesting or exciting way. And this is a really great way to express it. Liminal spaces, like the back rooms, where the rooms look like rooms, but not quite, as if some elder god was told the definition of things, but never really their shape or purpose. Imagine that. The elder god had an actual blueprint of a house to work off of. It doesn't understand writing, theme, character, or even romantic chemistry, or chemistry at all. And whenever it realizes that it doesn't know what the plot is, it just copies the blueprint, overwriting whatever it already made. If I could take back my time spent on reading Nothing Else Matter, do anything else, that'd be preferable. Really would be.